Gavin Newsom thought this was his moment, until Donald Trump walked in uninvited and ended a presidential campaign. "Nice suit, Gavin. Who paid?" was the first thing the president said when he walked into a Senate hearing he was not invited to. He brought pictures of every neighborhood Newsom destroyed. He had a nickname ready, and he knew something about Newsom's ex-wife. But there was one moment Newsom hit back hard enough that the room actually turned against Trump. What happened next ended a presidential campaign. Just 15 minutes earlier, Newsom had arrived looking like a man designed by a focus group, perfect suit, perfect hair. His team had already preloaded Instagram stories, California leads, Washington follows. He called Trump the greatest threat to American democracy since the Civil War, and the gallery applauded. Then the door opened. Secret Service first. Then Donald Trump walked in. Not invited, not scheduled. He walked to the dais, sat down, and looked at Newsom. He looked at the suit. He looked at the hair. "Nice suit, Gavin. Who paid?" The room made a sound. Not laughter, but the precursor to laughter. "No? Seriously?" Trump continued, leaning into the microphone with the casual authority of a man who had been leaning into microphones since before most of the people in the room were born. "That's a beautiful suit. What is that, Brioni?" 56? I know clothes. Believe me, I know clothes. That suit costs more than most people in your state pay for rent. But well, get to rent later. Well, get to a lot of things. He looked at the committee, he looked at the gallery, and he looked at the cameras. Then he looked back at Newsom. His expression settled into the one that every politician who had ever stood across from Donald Trump learned to fear, the smile that preceded the nickname. "You know, they tell me I shouldn't give people nicknames," he said. "My staff says it's unpresidential, but I can't help it. When I see it, I see it. And when I look at you, Gavin, the hair, the suit, the $350 dinners with lobbyists while your state is locked down, I see one thing." He paused. Timing. The comedian's pause. The real estate closer's pause. The pause that said, "What comes next is going to follow you for the rest of your life." French Laundry Gavin. He let it land. Let the room process it. Let the cameras capture Newsom's jaw tighten by exactly 1 millimeter. "And if that bothers you, Governor, you shouldn't have gone to dinner while people were dying at a restaurant where the appetizer costs more than a COVID test. But we'll get to that too. We'll get to all of it." He opened his suit jacket and produced a phone, the same phone he used to post on Truth Social at 300 inches the morning. The same phone that had sent messages that moved markets and started international incidents. He set it on the desk. "Because I brought pictures, Gavin. Lots of pictures. And a picture, as they say, is worth 1,000 words. And the pictures I have of your state are worth about $20 billion in homeless spending that didn't work." He tapped the phone. "Let's start with the beautiful state you destroyed." Trump did not use notes. Trump did not use folders, legal pads, or prepared remarks. Trump used a phone, a screen, and the particular gift that had carried him from Queens real estate to the White House, the ability to paint a picture with words so vivid that the audience could see it, and then show them the actual picture, which was always worse. "California." He said the word, the way people say the names of things they once loved. "I love California. I've built in California. Beautiful buildings, tremendous properties, the most beautiful state in America. Beaches, mountains, Napa Valley, Hollywood, wine country. You had everything, Gavin." He held up the phone and connected it to the hearing room display. The screen lit up with a photograph, a wide-angle shot of a San Francisco street. Tents, tarps, shopping carts, human beings lying on sidewalks in the middle of the day, surrounded by the accumulated debris of lives that had collapsed. "This is San Francisco, your city, where you were mayor. And I want everyone watching at home to understand, this is not a photograph from a war zone. This is not a developing country. This is the 5th largest economy in the world. and it looks like a third-world disaster area. He swiped. Next photo. Needles on a sidewalk. A child's playground visible in the background. That's your sidewalk, Gavin. Needles next to a playground where people pay $4,000 a month in rent to live next to this. He swiped again. Before and after of Venice Beach. A pristine stretch of sand and boardwalk on the left. A tent encampment stretching to the horizon on the right. Venice Beach. Before you were governor and after. Same beach, same ocean, different governor. And suddenly, it looks like a refugee camp. You spent $20 billion on homelessness, Gavin. 20 billion with a B. And the number went up. Do you understand how hard that is to do? You would have to actively work at making homelessness worse to spend 20 billion and have more homeless people than when you started. That takes a special kind of incompetence. A special kind. He set the phone down, and people are leaving. They're not just unhappy, they're packing. Tesla left. Elon took the whole company to Texas. Oracle left. Hewlett-Packard left. Joe Rogan left. And Joe Rogan can do his podcast from anywhere, and he picked Austin over LA. When Joe Rogan would rather live in Texas than California, you have a problem. They even have a term for it, the California Exodus. That's not me saying it. That's them. The people who lived there, who built businesses there, who loved California, they're running, and they're running from you. A man stood in the gallery, mid-40s, wearing a polo shirt with a company logo. He had the sunburned forearms of someone who worked outside and the exhausted expression of someone who had recently completed a cross-country move. "My name is Mike Driscoll," he said. "I ran a construction company in Riverside County for 16 years, 23 employees. We built houses, affordable houses, starter homes, the kind of homes that young families buy when they're starting out." He paused. "I moved the entire company to Boise, Idaho in 2023. Not because I wanted to leave California, I was born there. My kids were born there. But the regulations, the permitting costs, the taxes, I couldn't build a house in California for less than $600,000. In Idaho, I can build the same house for $310. My employees make the same salary, but their rent is half." He looked at Newsom. "My guys, the carpenters, the framers, the electricians, they thanked me for moving. They thanked me for taking them out of your state. When your own workers thank their boss for leaving, Governor, that tells you everything." He sat down. Trump pointed at Driscoll. "That guy right there. That guy. He built houses for 16 years. Real houses for real families. And he had to leave your state to keep doing it. He couldn't build affordable housing in California because your regulations made it impossible. And then you go on CNN and say, 'We need more affordable housing.' You're the reason there isn't any. I built buildings in California. Beautiful buildings, real buildings, not campaign promises. Buildings. And if I was still building there, I'd move them too. I'd put them on trucks and drive them to Nevada. That's how bad your state has become under your leadership." Trump pulled up his phone again. Two images side by side on the screen. On the left, Newsom's Instagram post from a Monday in November 2020. The governor in a mask, serious expression, caption, "Stay home, save lives. We're all in this together." On the right, the French Laundry photograph from the same week. Newsom maskless, laughing, surrounded by lobbyists at a $350 a plate dinner, wine glasses raised. "Monday," Trump said, pointing to the left image. "Stay home, save lives." Very serious, tremendous mask. Great performance. He pointed to the right image. Friday, same week. 350 a plate. Lobbyists on both sides, no mask, laughing like it's New Year's Eve. He looked at the committee. "Same week, Gavin. You posted the stay-home message, and the French Laundry photos happened in the same week. Monday, you're telling 40 million people to cancel Thanksgiving. Friday, You're eating appetizers that cost more than most people's grocery bill for a month." Newsom leaned forward. His voice carried the polished authority of a man accustomed to controlling hearings, not surviving them. "Mr. President, California has a $3.6 trillion economy. We create more jobs than any other state. We lead in technology, biotech, entertainment, renewable energy. You're showing photographs of one neighborhood and pretending they represent 40 million people. That's not governance. That's a slideshow." Trump didn't pause. "One neighborhood? One, Gavin? I've got pictures of every neighborhood. Want me to keep going? I've got the Tenderloin. I've got Skid Row. I've got Venice Beach before you, and Venice Beach after. It's like a before and after ad for a product that makes everything worse. Try Newsom, guaranteed to make your city unrecognizable. And yeah, California has a big economy despite you, not because of you. California has an economy because of the weather, and because brilliant people built things there before you started ruining it. You didn't build Silicon Valley, Gavin. You didn't build Hollywood. Steve Jobs built Silicon Valley. Walt Disney built Hollywood. You inherited them, and you're driving them out. If you're still listening, you already know French Laundry Gavin is in trouble. But what Trump reveals next is going to make the homeless pictures look like a warm-up. We're about to talk about the French Laundry dinner in detail, the COVID lockdowns, and $33 billion in unemployment fraud that just disappeared. Hit that like button and comment French Laundry if you see where this is going. The 6th of November 2020. Trump's voice shifted. Still showman, still entertainer. But underneath the performance, something sharper. The prosecutor beneath the showman. Peak COVID. The absolute peak. Hospitals full. People dying. Businesses closed. Schools shut. And you, Gavin, Governor Gavin Newsom of California, you're on television every day telling 40 million people stay home, don't gather. Don't see your family for Thanksgiving. Wear a mask. Follow the science. He held up a finger. Very serious, very dramatic, very convincing. The hair didn't even move during the press conferences. That's commitment. And that same night, the same night you're telling grandmothers they can't see their grandchildren, you're at the French Laundry, Napa Valley, $350 a plate with lobbyists, no mask, 12 people at the table. And here's the best part. The best part? The sliding glass doors were closed. Not outside like you told the press. Inside. We have the photos. Fox 11 obtained them. The whole world has seen them. He showed the French Laundry photos again, full screen. This time, Newsom in the center of the frame, laughing, wine glass raised, surrounded by people in suits who were clearly not observing any of the guidelines that their state's governor had imposed on 39 million other Californians. "Look at that face," Trump said, pointing at the screen. "Look at that face. He is having the time of his life." The time of his life, $350 a plate. The CEO of the California Medical Association, the guy running the organization, telling everyone else to wear masks sitting right next to him. Also, no mask. They're laughing. Gavin, you're all laughing. And 3 miles away, a restaurant owner is telling her staff she can't pay them anymore. He let the photo hang on the screen. Meanwhile, your kids, your own children, were going to private school in person while public schools were closed. Your lockdown, your rules, and your kids were exempt. Because in Gavin Newsom's California, the rules apply to everyone except the governor, and the governor's kids, and the governor's lobbyist friends at the French Laundry. Rules for thee, but not for me. That's not leadership. That's monarchy. And the French Laundry is your Versailles. A woman stood in the gallery. She was in her 50s, wearing a simple blouse, her hands clasped in front of her. She spoke before the chairman could intervene, and her voice carried the particular steadiness of someone who had rehearsed what she was about to say because she was afraid she would cry if she hadn't. "My name is Rosa Callahan," she said. I owned a restaurant in Yountville, 3 miles from the French Laundry. Same county, same lockdown rules. I closed for 7 months. I lost my savings. I lost my marriage. My husband left because the stress was too much. I laid off 11 employees. People I'd worked with for 15 years. She paused. The governor was 3 miles away, eating $350 appetizers with the lobbyists who helped write the lockdown rules that closed my restaurant. 3 miles. That's how far apart our lives were. 3 miles and $350. She sat down. The hearing room was quiet. Trump, for once, did not immediately fill the silence. He let Rosa Callahan's words do what they needed to do. Then, $33 billion. That's the other number nobody talks about. Your Employment Development Department, worst name for a department that loses money, by the way, sent out $33 billion in unemployment payments to fraudsters, to people who didn't exist, to prisoners, to people using dead people's social security numbers. $33 billion. You know how much that is? It's more than the GDP of half the countries in the United Nations. And you just lost it. Like car keys. Except car keys are worth $20, not $33 billion. But here's my question. Gavin, where were you when $33 billion disappeared? Were you in Sacramento? Were you in your office? Were you on the phone with the EDD trying to fix it? He leaned forward. Or were you at the French Laundry? He let the question sit. He didn't need an answer. The question was the answer. Trump shifted in his chair, and something in his demeanor changed. Not softer exactly, but more deliberate. The showman was still there, but the comedy had receded, replaced by something that Trump's opponents often forgot. He possessed the instinct for the jugular. Now I'm going to talk about something personal, Gavin. And I want you to know I'm not a perfect person. I've been in the tabloids. I've had my share of, let's call them, situations. The media has covered my personal life more than they've covered most wars. So I'm not going to preach. I don't preach. He held up a hand. But there's one thing I care about more than almost anything else. And everybody who works for me, everybody who has ever worked for me, knows what it is, loyalty. You can disagree with me. You can argue with me. You can tell me I'm wrong. And sometimes I am wrong, although not as often as people think. But if I trust you, and you betray that trust, that's the one thing I don't forgive. Alex Tork, your best friend, your campaign manager, the guy who ran your campaigns, not the guy who showed up at the fundraisers, the guy who built them, who knocked on doors, who raised money, who defended you to every person who said you were too slick, too ambitious, too San Francisco to be trusted. Alex Tork did that for you because he was your friend, and you slept with his wife. The hearing room went very still. Ruby Rippy Tork, your appointment secretary, an employee in your office, your best friend's wife. And while Alex was out there building your political career, while he was spending his evenings and weekends working to make you mayor, you were having an affair with the woman he came home to. He found out. He confronted you. He resigned. He walked out of your life. And he took with him the one thing you can never get back, the trust of someone who believed in you. And what did you do? You held a press conference and said you were deeply sorry. Very smooth. Very polished. Great hair that day too, by the way. Then you blamed alcohol. You said you'd go to rehab. And then, and this is the part that kills me, you didn't go to rehab. You told the Sacramento Bee. 6 years later, there was no treatment. I just stopped. No rehab, no program, no accountability. You just stopped. He looked at the committee. And then you ran for governor and won. Because in California, I guess betraying your best friend is a resume builder. Maybe they should add it to LinkedIn under skills policy development, public speaking, sleeping with campaign manager's wife. Newsom fired back, and for the first time in the hearing, he abandoned the teleprompter polish. His voice was raw, the voice of a man who had been cut and was bleeding. Mr. President, you want to talk about character? Let's talk about your character. 6 bankruptcies, a fake university that paid $25 million in fraud settlements, a charity, the Trump Foundation, shut down by the state of New York for self-dealing, and you were convicted of 34 felonies. You want to compare records, Mr. President? Because my state has a budget surplus. Your businesses have a bankruptcy lawyer. The Democratic gallery erupted. Standing ovation. Newsom's team was on their feet. His communications director was filming with both hands shaking. This was the clip. This was the moment. This was Gavin Newsom punching back against Donald Trump on live television and landing it. The 6 bankruptcies were real. Trump University was real. The foundation was real. The convictions were real. 20 seconds of genuine, dangerous momentum. 20 seconds where the hearing room belonged to Gavin Newsom. Trump waited. He waited through the applause. He waited through the standing ovation. He waited with the patience of a man who had been bankrupt and had come back, who had been written off and had come back, who had lost an election and had come back, who understood, in a way that Gavin Newsom would never understand, that getting knocked down is not the same as being knocked out. 6 bankruptcies, Trump said. You're right. 6. And I came back every time, every single time. That's what builders do, Gavin. We fail. We lose money. We get knocked down by the banks and the markets and the lawyers. And we get up. We build again. We make it bigger. The second time. You know what you did when California failed? When the homeless numbers went up? When the businesses left? When $33 billion disappeared from the EDD? You went to the French Laundry? I went back to work. That's the difference between us. When things go wrong, I build. When things go wrong, you eat. He pointed at Newsom. And the Trump Foundation, you're right, it was shut down. I paid the penalty. I moved on. I didn't blame alcohol. I didn't say. I just stopped. I said, "I'll do better." And then I became president twice. You blamed alcohol for sleeping with your best friend's wife, and then told the press 6 years later that you never actually went to rehab. That's not accountability, Gavin. That's a press release with hair gel. He paused, and the smile returned. The Trump smile, the one that meant a bomb was incoming. Not a policy bomb or an evidence bomb, but the kind of bomb that only Donald Trump had the audacity to drop. But speaking of ex-wives, and this is my favorite part, folks, this is the part I've been saving. He rubbed his hands together. The anticipation in the room was physical. A tightening, a leaning forward. 300 people who could feel what was coming. The way animals feel a change in atmospheric pressure before a storm. Your first wife, Kimberly Guilfoyle. Beautiful woman, very smart, tremendous energy, great on TV. She was married to you, he pointed at Newsom. Then she left. He pointed at himself. And she came to work for me. The room made a sound that was not quite laughter and not quite a gasp. Something between the two. The sound a crowd makes when it witnesses something that shouldn't be said out loud, but just was. She joined my team. She became one of my best people. She went from being married to the governor of California to working for the President of the United States. And when I asked her, and I did ask her, because I'm a curious person, very curious Kimberly, what was it like being married to Gavin? You know what she said? Maximum pause. Every camera focused on Trump's face. Every microphone pointed at his mouth. Every person in the room holding their breath. She just smiled. That's it. Didn't say a word, just smiled. He let the smile description hang in the air. And honestly, that smile told me everything I needed to know about your leadership, your character, and your state. Even your ex-wife chose Trump over Newsom Gavin, and she had personal experience with both options. He held up both hands. I'm not reading too much into it, but a lot of people are reading into it. A lot of people. Many, Many people. Newsom opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in the hearing, for the first time in what may have been years, Gavin Newsom did not have a response. The teleprompter politician who always had the perfect word could not find one. He started to speak, stopped, started again, and stopped again. And then he did something that nobody in the room had ever seen him do. He reached up and touched his hair. It was a small gesture, unconscious, involuntary, the reflexive motion of a man reaching for the one thing that had never failed him. 3 reporters in the press section independently noted it in their coverage. One described it as the moment Newsom's armor cracked. Another called it the political equivalent of a structural failure. A third simply wrote, "He touched his hair." In the taxonomy of Gavin Newsom body language, it was a white flag. What Trump says next connects everything: the French Laundry, the homelessness, the 33 billion, the affair, the ex-wife, into one devastating conclusion about Gavin Newsom's entire career. If you're not subscribed, you're about to miss the final blow. And trust me, you do not want to miss this. Trump stood up. He buttoned his jacket, the suit that was slightly too long in the tie, slightly too wide in the shoulders. The suit of a man who had never once in his life looked like he was designed by a focus group. Because he wasn't. He was designed by queens, by concrete, by the New York real estate market of the 1970s, which did not reward polish and did not forgive weakness and did not care about your hair. You know what I call you, French Laundry? Not just the nickname. I mean what you are. He looked at Newsom with something that was not contempt. Trump reserved contempt for people he considered boring, but something closer to diagnosis. The look of a builder examining a structure and identifying the flaw. You're a beautiful disaster. Everything about you looks great. The hair, perfect. The suit, perfect. The smile, perfect. The words, smooth, polished, teleprompter, perfect. You look like a governor. You look like a president. You might be the best-looking politician in America. And I say that as someone who knows a thing or two about looking good. But underneath? Nothing. Under the hair, no ideas. Under the suit, no backbone. Under the smile, no honesty. Under the words, no results. You're a model home with no plumbing. You're a beautiful building with no foundation. You look like $1 million, and you cost the taxpayers $20 billion in homeless spending alone. He picked up the phone one last time. Let me add it up, because I'm a numbers guy. I build things for a living. I know what things cost, and I know what things are worth. And your record, French Laundry, is a masterclass in spending a lot and getting nothing. He counted on his fingers. 20 billion on homelessness. Homelessness went up. That's like hiring a personal trainer and getting fatter. 20 billion, Gavin. You could have bought houses for every homeless person in California for less than that. Just bought them, handed them keys. Here you go, enjoy. It would have been cheaper than whatever you did, which as far as I can tell was hold press conferences about homelessness while the tents multiplied behind you. 33 billion in unemployment fraud. Gone. Vanished. Can't find it. Nobody knows where it went. If I lost $33 billion in my business, it'd be in prison. You lost it in government, and you got a second term. That tells you everything about the difference between the private sector and politics. High-speed rail. He stopped counting on his fingers and held up both hands in a gesture of pure bewilderment. This one is my favorite. This is the one that keeps me up at night, not because it's the worst, but because it's the most amazing. You started building a high-speed rail system in California. Voters approved it in 2008. It was supposed to connect San Francisco to Los Angeles. Fast train. Very exciting. The future of transportation. It is now 2026, 18 years later. They have spent over $100 billion. And you know how many passengers have ridden the California high-speed rail? He held up his hand, forming a zero with his thumb and index finger. Zero. Not one. Not a single human being has ever sat in a seat on the California high-speed rail and gone anywhere. You've spent more money than it costs to build the entire interstate highway system adjusted for inflation, and you have produced $100 billion pile of concrete in the middle of the Central Valley that goes nowhere. I build buildings in less time than it takes you to build a train station. I built a 6-8-story building in Manhattan in 3 years. You can't build a train track in 18. And my building has tenants. Your train has tumbleweeds. Gas prices? Highest in the nation by a lot. Your people are paying $6, $7 a gallon, while the rest of America pays $3. And you want to ban gas cars by 2035. So not only are you charging people the most for gas now, you're telling them they can't use it in 10 years. That's like a restaurant that poisons your meal and then tells you the kitchen's closing. Businesses leaving. Tesla, Oracle, Hewlett-Packard, Charles Schwab, Palantir. Gone. All gone. Move to Texas. Move to Tennessee. Move to anywhere that isn't California. When Elon Musk, the guy who builds rockets, tells you your state is too dysfunctional to operate in, you have a problem that hair gel cannot fix. People leaving. 300,000 net out-migration in 4 years. 300,000 people who packed their cars, loaded their trucks, said goodbye to their neighbors, and drove east. Away from your California, away from your policies, away from your leadership. They voted with their feet, Gavin, and their feet voted for Texas. And you walked into this hearing in front of the United States Senate and the American people, and said California is a model. He paused. Let the absurdity settle. A model of what? A model of how to spend $100 billion and make everything worse? A model of how to turn paradise into a parking lot? Because if that's the model, congratulations. You're the best in the business. Nobody destroys a beautiful state like French Laundry Gavin. Nobody. He set the phone down. I build things. Real things. Buildings, hotels, golf courses. You can touch them. You can walk through them. They exist. They have lobbies and elevators and people working in them. What have you built? Name one thing, one building, one road, one bridge, one anything that exists in the physical world because of Gavin Newsom. He waited 3 seconds, 5, nothing. Because you don't build. You talk, you hold press conferences, and you look good, and you say the right words, and your hair doesn't move, and everybody claps. But when the press conference is over, and the cameras turn off, and the hair gel dries, nothing has been built. Nothing has changed. And California is worse than it was before you started talking. His voice dropped, not to a whisper, because Trump didn't whisper, but to something lower and more serious than the audience had heard. And the fires. Let's talk about the fires, because nobody else will. You told the people of California that you had treated thousands of acres for wildfire prevention, fuel breaks, prescribed burns. Thousands of acres, you said. Very impressive numbers. An investigation found you overstated it by 690%. 690! You claimed thousands. The real number was a fraction. You lied about fire prevention, Gavin. And then people's homes burned. I talked to a firefighter from Paradise after the campfire. You know what he told me? He said, the governor held a press conference and said all the right things. Beautiful words, perfect hair. Then he got in his car and drove back to Sacramento. And we stayed and dug through ashes looking for bodies. Beautiful words. No results. That is your entire career in one sentence. Trump buttoned his jacket again. A reset. A signal that the closing argument was arriving. French Laundry Gavin. The beautiful disaster. The man who had everything: the most beautiful state, the biggest economy, the best weather, the most talented people in the world, and turned it all into something that people are literally fleeing from. You want to be president of this country, Gavin? You can't run a laundry, and I don't mean the French kind. Gavin Newsom made one last attempt. His voice had changed. The polished, modulated tone that had served him for 20 years of political life had been replaced by something thinner, more strained. The voice of a machine that was running out of fuel. The people of California re-elected me by a historic margin. The people of California are leaving by a historic margin, Trump said. 300,000 a year. They're voting with their feet, Gavin, and their feet are pointed at Texas. Newsom's jacket had creased at the left shoulder, a small wrinkle that would have been invisible on anyone else, but that on a man whose entire political identity was built on the absence of wrinkles looked like a crack in a load-bearing wall. His communications director had stopped filming 6 minutes earlier. His social media team had deleted the preloaded Instagram stories, all of them. The California leads and the future looks like this, and every other caption that had been prepared for a hearing that was supposed to be a coronation and had become an autopsy. The committee chairman, who had lost control of his own hearing approximately 90 minutes ago and had made peace with that fact, gave a weak tap. The committee will take the matters discussed today under advisement. No referrals, no investigations, no formal actions, just adjournment. The institutional equivalent of a building being evacuated without anyone pulling the fire alarm. The Democrats left the way Democrats always left when things went wrong individually, quietly, with carefully composed expressions suggesting they had somewhere more important to be. Newsom's campaign staff was already in the hallway, and through the open door several committee members could see them doing something that campaign staff should never be seen doing on the day of a public hearing: packing boxes. Newsom stood. He straightened his jacket. He did not touch his hair again. He had learned in the last 90 minutes that that particular gesture cost more than it gained. He walked toward the exit with the measured stride of a man who was determined to leave the room looking like the man who had entered it, even though everyone in the room, including most painfully Newsom himself, knew that man no longer existed. At the door he paused. Not for a final line, he had none. He paused because leaving a room where you have been publicly disassembled requires a moment of internal recalibration, a brief negotiation between the person you were and the person you now are. He left. Trump stayed. Of course Trump stayed. Trump always stayed, because leaving a room where you've won is, in Trump's view, the same as leaving money on the table. He took questions from the press for 12 minutes. Not from behind a podium, but standing in the hearing room surrounded by cameras, conducting what amounted to a mini-rally in a congressional chamber. Was that necessary, Mr. President? Was what necessary the truth? Yeah, the truth is always necessary. Not always popular, but always necessary. Do you think Governor Newsom will still run for president? I hope he does. I really do. French Laundry Gavin running for president would be the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. And people have given me a lot of gifts. Tremendous gifts. What about the Kimberly Guilfoyle comment? Was that too personal? Trump paused. A real pause, not a performance pause. Maybe. Yeah, maybe that was a lot. But it was true. And I always go with true, even when it's a lot. Especially when it's a lot. He walked out through the main entrance, not the side door. The main entrance, signing autographs on the way, shaking hands with Capitol police officers, posing for a photo with a janitor who asked. Classic Trump. The building was his stage, and he did not leave stages quietly. The internet moved at its usual speed, which in Trump's case meant faster than the speed of sound and approximately twice the speed of light. French Laundry Gavin held the #1 trending position worldwide. For 41 hours, the longest any Trump-coined nickname had trended since Crooked Hillary in 2016. Beautiful Disaster was #2. Your ex-wife chose Trump. A hashtag that made Newsom's communications team physically ill was #3. The clip that traveled farthest was not the homeless photos or the French Laundry takedown or even the Kimberly line. It was the hair touch. 7 seconds of footage. Newsom reaching up, running his fingers through his architecturally perfect hair. The involuntary gesture of a man whose armor had cracked was viewed 68 million times in 24 hours. It was memed, gifed, auto-tuned, and set to music. A composer in Nashville wrote a country song called He touched his hair. It reached #4 on iTunes within a week. Rosa Callahan, the restaurant owner from Yountville, gave one interview to a local Napa paper. 3 miles and $350, she said. That's the title of my memoir if I ever write one. 3 miles between his dinner and my bankruptcy. $350 for his appetizer, while I couldn't afford to keep the lights on. Newsom's Presidential Exploratory Committee suspended operations at 9:15 p.m. that evening. The statement was 3 sentences long and contained the phrase, "reassessing the political landscape." Translation, "It's over." A major Democratic donor speaking anonymously to Politico said, "The French laundry thing we could survive. The hair touch we could not." When a candidate's defining image becomes a moment of weakness on live television, the campaign math stops working. It doesn't matter how much money you raise when the most shared clip of your career is you reaching for your own head. Mike Driscoll, the construction company owner from Riverside County, posted a photo on social media that night, his crew standing in front of a half-built house in Boise, Idaho. Hard hats on, smiling. The caption, "This house would have cost $600K in California. It'll sell for $310K here." Same workers, same materials, different governor, California exodus. The post was shared 90,000 times. Kimberly Guilfoyle posted one emoji on social media that night. No caption, no commentary, just a smile emoji. It received 11 million likes. It was the most liked emoji in the history of the platform. Somebody in the comments wrote, "She didn't say a word. She didn't have to." It received 400,000 likes of its own. That evening, the President of the United States went to a construction site. Not a rally, not a fundraiser, not a press event. A construction site. A federal building being renovated in Northwest D.C., 6 blocks from the White House. Steel beams and concrete forms, and the sound of heavy machinery, doing what heavy machinery does, building something that didn't exist yesterday and would exist tomorrow. Trump liked construction sites. He had always liked them since he was a boy in Queens, watching his father's crews pour foundations and raise walls and turn empty lots into buildings that housed families and employed workers, and stood physically in the real world as proof that someone had done something, not said something, not posted something, done something. He walked through the site in his suit, no hard hat which made the foreman nervous, and the Secret Service nervous, and the safety inspector very nervous, and stopped to talk to the crew, iron workers and crane operators and concrete guys who recognized him immediately. Because construction workers had always recognized Trump, even before politics, because he was one of them. In the only way that mattered, he built things. "How's the building guys coming along, sir?" "Steel's up on the 4th floor. Beautiful. Make it beautiful." Nobody remembers ugly buildings. A reporter had followed him, a White House correspondent who had learned that the best Trump quotes happened after the official events, in the margins, in the moments when the performance ended and the person remained. "Mr. President, why are you here?" Trump looked at the steel beams going up, watched a crane lift a section of framework into position against the darkening sky. The sound of welding, bright, sharp, the sound of things being joined together. Because this is what leadership looks like, not press conferences and hair gel and $350 dinners. You build something. You take a piece of dirt, and you make something exist that didn't exist before. That's the job. That's the whole job. He watched another beam go up. Newsom had the most beautiful state in America. And he turned it into a cautionary tale. "I've got a construction site, and turning it into a building. You tell me who's doing the job." The reporter asked one more question. "Do you regret the ex-wife comment?" Trump watched the crane. The beam locked into place, with a sound like a deadbolt closing. The workers cheered. The small professional cheer of men who had just completed a step in a process that would eventually become a building that would stand for 100 years. "A little bit," he said. "Maybe." "Yeah, It was a lot. But you know what? It was true. And in this business, in real estate and in politics and in life, true is all you've got. Everything else is hair gel. He paused, watched a welder work on a joint, sparks falling like orange rain. You know, people ask me why I'm hard on guys like Newsom, why I can't just be presidential and let it go. And the answer is because he had everything. California is the most beautiful place on earth. The weather, the coast, the mountains, the people, everything. And he wasted it. He took paradise and turned it into a mess. And that makes me angry. Not political angry, builder angry. Because a builder looks at waste and it drives him crazy. I've built things in bad neighborhoods and turned them into good neighborhoods. He took the best neighborhood in America and turned it into a bad one. That's not politics. That's vandalism. He walked back to the motorcade. The construction site hummed behind him. Workers working, cranes lifting, a building becoming real one beam at a time, the sound of something being built, which is the opposite of the sound of something falling apart, which is what the French Laundry sounded like when the sliding glass doors closed. And the governor laughed, and the woman 3 miles away turned off the lights in her restaurant for the last time. The builder from Queens had reminded the governor from San Francisco of something that perfect hair and $5,000 suits and $350 appetizers could never teach. That leadership is not what you look like, it's what you leave behind. And what Gavin Newsom left behind: a state on fire, a budget in freefall, a city of tents, and a trail of broken trust stretching from the French Laundry to the governor's mansion, was the most beautiful disaster in American political history. Perfect on the outside, empty on the inside. Just like the suit. If you made it this far, you just watched a real estate developer from Queens dismantle the most polished politician in America using pictures, a nickname, and his opponent's own ex-wife's smile. Smash that like button if you think French Laundry Gavin is the greatest Trump nickname since Crooked Hillary. Subscribe because more stories are coming, and the next one is going to be even more tremendous. Comment: beautiful disaster if you think California deserves better than a governor whose best skill is his hair. And share this with everyone who's ever been promised something beautiful and gotten a disaster instead. God bless the builders. God bless the workers. God bless Rosa Callahan's restaurant. And God bless the people who left California. Wherever you are, you made a great decision. Tremendous decision. French Laundry Gavin, the beautiful disaster, perfect hair, empty state, and an ex-wife who just smiled.